What really happened to the stars of Green Acres when the cameras stopped rolling? They were America's favorite farmers, neighbors, and dreamers. But beyond the sunny fields of Hooterville were battles with illness, loss, and heartache that few people know about. Join us as we explore how 13 beloved stars said their final goodbyes. Eddie Albert as Oliver Wendell Douglas. When Eddie Albert first played Oliver Wendell Douglas in Green Acres in 1965, he was 59 years old, a dashing, idealistic New York lawyer determined to abandon the hustle and bustle of Manhattan for the simple farm life of Hooterville. As Oliver, Albert exuded a steely optimism, often delivering exasperated speeches about farming amid his eccentric neighbors and his charming, city-loving wife. Born April 22, 1906, in Rock Island, Illinois, Edward Albert Heimberger grew up in Minnesota and attended the University of Minnesota before pursuing a career in entertainment. He worked in radio and theater before moving into film in the 1930s. During World War II, Albert served heroically as a lieutenant in the United States Navy, participating in the Battle of Tarawa, where he rescued 47 Marines under heavy fire, an act that earned him the Bronze Star Medal. His Hollywood career was extremely varied. Albert received 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Supporting Actor for Roman Holiday, 1953, and The Heartbreak Kid, 1972. He appeared in dramas, comedies, and even action films. But Green Acres cemented his place in popular culture. Off-screen, Albert was a passionate environmentalist long before it was fashionable, advocating for urban gardening and pollution control. He married Mexican actress Margot in 1945, and they remained together until her death in 1985. They had a son, actor Edward Albert Jr., who later became his father's caregiver. In the early 1990s, Albert was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, but he continued to live at home with the support of his family, maintaining a routine of gardening and short walks. In his later years, Albert's health gradually declined, although his mind remained lucid at times. He died of pneumonia on May 26, 2005, at the age of 99, just a year short of his centenary. Ava Gabor as Lisa Douglas. When Ava Gabor brought Lisa Douglas to life in the 1965 play Green Acres, she was 46 years old, radiant, poised, and exuding the natural charm of a Hungarian upper-class woman, completely out of place in the chaotic countryside of Hooterville. Dressed in gorgeous dresses while tending chickens or working in the fields, Lisa became the comedy's crown jewel. Her melodious voice, subtle wit, and ability to deliver absurd lines with sincerity made Ava one of television's most out-of-place characters. Born on February 11, 1919, in Budapest, Hungary, Eva was the youngest of the famous Gabor sisters, along with Zsa and Magda. She left war-torn Europe for America in the 1940s, building a career in Hollywood at a time when foreign-born actresses were often stereotyped. Eva broke that mold, appearing in films like Gigi, 1958, voicing Disney in The Aristocats, 1970, and Miss Bianca in The Rescuers, 1977. Her personal life was as glamorous and eventful as her on-screen persona. Eva was married 5 times, each marriage ending in divorce. She socialized with Hollywood elite, attended lavish parties, and befriended politicians and royalty. But beneath the glamour, she bore the silent scars of exile, having rebuilt her life in a foreign land after losing her home to war. By the early 1990s, Eva's health began to fail. She suffered a series of complications, including a hip injury that left her with limited mobility. In 1995, on a trip to Mexico, she contracted food poisoning, which quickly turned into pneumonia. Her condition rapidly worsened, and she died on July 4, 1995, in Los Angeles, at the age of 76. Pat Buttram as Mr. Haney. When Pat Buttram played Mr. Eustace Haney in Green Acres in 1965, he was 50 years old, a skinny peddler whose piercing eyes, nasal drawl, and endless supply of bargains made him one of Hooterville's most colorful con men. Mr. Haney was the kind of guy who could sell you his own hat and have you thank him for it. And Buttram played him with such impish charm that audiences couldn't help but love him, even as he conned Oliver Douglas week after week. Born Maxwell Emmett Buttram on June 19, 1915 in Addison, Alabama, Pat grew up in a small town, the son of a Methodist minister. He initially educated himself to become a minister, but found his calling in show business, starting his career on radio in Chicago before moving to Hollywood. His distinctive, high-pitched Southern drawl became his trademark, leading to steady roles in films alongside Gene Autry in the 1940s and 1950s. Buttram's personal life was marked by love, loss, and both resilience and bitterness. In 1948, he married actress Sheila Ryan, a beautiful former 20th century Fox contract actress who had been romantically linked to such big names as Clark Gable before settling down with Pat. Although their relationship seemed happy on the outside, the pressures of Hollywood and the demands of both careers kept them apart for long periods. They had a daughter, Carrie, and friends described Pat as a devoted father who often rearranged his schedule to be with his daughter. Tragedy struck in 1975 when Sheila died suddenly of lung cancer at the age of 54. The loss devastated Pat, who never remarried, choosing instead to focus on his work and his daughter. Pat was a generous man in private, regularly donating anonymously to charities and helping struggling friends in the industry. However, he kept his grief to himself, masking it with humor. In his later years, his health declined, including kidney failure. He spent his final months in California, surrounded by family and close friends, and died on January 8, 1994, at the age of 78. Frank Cady as Sam Drucker. When Frank Cady first appeared as Sam Drucker, a mild-mannered grocery store owner in Green Acres in 1965, he was 50 years old. Sam was more than just a salesman. He was the unofficial heartbeat of Hooterville, dispensing everything from canned beans to gossip, always with a knowing smile. Born September 8, 1915 in Susanville, California, Frank Randolph Cady's path to fame was far from straightforward. He studied journalism at Stanford University, but the world of print journalism wasn't enough. He found himself drawn to the stage. After working in radio and theater, World War II interrupted his career. Cady served in the United States Army Air Corps, stationed in England, before returning home to rebuild his acting career from scratch. His post-war years were filled with small film roles and television guest appearances, but his steady professionalism and ability to make even the smallest roles memorable eventually opened bigger doors. Cady's personal life was relatively quiet compared to Hollywood. He married his college sweetheart, Shirley, in 1940, and they were together for more than 6 decades, a marriage that weathered war, career uncertainty, and the fickle nature of show business. Friends described their relationship as built on quiet devotion rather than public display. Even after Green Acres folded in 1971, Frank refused to abandon the lure of urban fame, opting for a quiet family life. His final years, however, were not without their darkness. Cady largely withdrew from acting after the early 1990s, retreating into private life as health problems began to emerge. He and Shirley moved to Oregon, where they lived quietly, away from the cameras. In 2008, Shirley died, ending their 68-year relationship. Frank followed her 4 years later, passing away peacefully in his sleep on June 8, 2012, at the age of 96. Tom Lester as Eb Dawson. When Tom Lester took on the role of Eb Dawson in Green Acres in 1965, he was 27 years old, young, enthusiastic, and completely immersed in the role of the wide-eyed, slightly goofy farmer who was devoted to Oliver and Lisa Douglas. Eb's blend of country, naive charm, and boundless enthusiasm made him one of the show's most lovable characters. Born September 23, 1938, in Laurel, Mississippi, Thomas William Lester grew up on a farm, the son of a farmer and a homemaker. He graduated from the University of Mississippi with a degree in chemistry and biology, with aspirations of becoming a teacher. But a move to Los Angeles and a chance encounter at an acting workshop changed his life. Unlike the polished Hollywood types, his natural authenticity caught the attention of casting directors, winning the role of Ebb over hundreds of hopefuls. After Green Acres ended in 1971, Lester faced the harsh realities of stereotypical casting. Hollywood had trouble seeing likable farmers, and leading roles became scarce. While many other actors would pursue fame at all costs, Lester stayed out of the spotlight for many years, working as a farmer and traveling as a Christian speaker. His deep religious faith became the foundation of his identity, and he was known for turning down roles that went against his beliefs, even when it meant losing out on lucrative opportunities. Lester did not marry until later in life, a surprise to many who thought his clean-cut looks and celebrity status would bring him plenty of romantic opportunities. In 2007, at the age of 68, he married Kaylee, a woman much younger than him, a union that intrigued fans and friends. Behind closed doors, Lester kept his marriage private, preferring to keep his public image centered around his faith and acting career. Lester's health later began to decline due to Parkinson's disease, a diagnosis he had been living with for years before it was made public. As his condition worsened, he withdrew from public events, spending his final days at his farm in Mississippi, cared for by his wife and family. On April 20, 2020, he died at the age of 81 from complications related to the disease. Parley Bear as Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Peterson. When Parley Bear appeared in Green Acres in the late 1960s, he was a familiar face and voice to millions. In the film, he played small-town powerhouses like the Lieutenant Governor and Mr. Peterson, portraying them with a combination of friendliness and calm command. Whether a suave politician or a shrewd businessman, Bear had a talent for making even supporting roles memorable, adding a layer of authenticity and small-town realism to the fantastical world of Hooterville. Born August 5, 1914 in Salt Lake City, Utah, Parley, Edward Bear's career began not on screen, but behind the microphone. During the golden age of radio, he became one of the industry's busiest actors, voicing everything from cowboys to comedic sidekicks. He was particularly famous for his role as Chester in the radio version of Gunsmoke, with his warm, folksy voice making the character one of the most beloved. By the 1950s, Bear had transitioned seamlessly to television, becoming a quintessentially American actor, reliable, adaptable, and instantly recognizable. In real life, Bear's life was marked by a decades-long marriage to actress and journalist Ernestine Clark. The couple met during his early days in radio and married in 1946, remaining together until her death in 2000. Friends described their relationship as a true partnership, with Ernestine often helping him manage his career, while Bear brought humor and devotion to their private lives. The loss of his wife after 54 years of marriage was a huge blow from which he never fully recovered. Bear's later years were marked by both career brilliance and personal challenges. Even into his 80s, he continued to act, appearing on shows like Seinfeld, ER, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But in 2002, he suffered a stroke that left him partially paralyzed and unable to continue working. Less than a year later, on November 22, 2002, he died in Los Angeles at the age of 88, ending a career that spanned more than 6 decades. Mary Grace Canfield as Ralph Monroe. When Mary Grace Canfield first appeared as Ralph Monroe in Green Acres in 1965, she was 41 years old, wearing overalls, wielding a hammer, and completely unaware that her job was often a disaster. As one of two Carpenter brothers along with her brother Alf, Ralph was very different, and Canfield played her with a sincerity, earnestness, and dryness that made her instantly memorable. In an era when women on television were often portrayed as housewives or glamorous career girls, Ralph stood out, a businesswoman with extraordinary drive, personality, and a complete disregard for convention. Born on September 3, 1924, in Rochester, New York, Mary Grace Canfield studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City, honing her skills on stage before moving to television and film. Her career was built on character roles, quirky, heart-wrenching roles that required subtle comedic skills. Before Green Acres, she made her mark with appearances on The Andy Griffith Show, The Twilight Zone, and Bewitched, in which she played Harriet Kravitz. While her career has been stable, Canfield's personal life has been less public. She was married to Charles Carey and had 2 daughters, but the marriage ended in divorce, a separation she rarely discusses. Friends described her as warm, generous, and devoted to her children, often turning down jobs that would keep her away from them for long periods of time. In interviews, she admitted that she sometimes felt boxed into a strange role, a label that both provided her with steady work and limited her opportunities. After Green Acres ended in 1971, Canfield continued to act, making guest appearances until the 1990s. But her life took a more peaceful turn. She moved to Santa Barbara, California, to focus on raising her family and enjoying a private life away from the noise of Hollywood. In 2014, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, a battle she fought with dignity but without fanfare. Mary Grace Canfield died on February 15, 2014, at the age of 89. Hank Patterson as Fred Ziffel. When Hank Patterson first appeared as Fred Ziffel in Green Acres in 1965, he was 77 years old, a veteran actor of Hollywood's golden age. Fred, along with his wife Doris, were the proud parents of Arnold the Pig, a popular character who would become one of the series' most beloved running gags. Patterson's dry, emotionless performance made Fred the perfect foil for the absurdity of Hooterville, and his chemistry with both his human and porcine co-stars was effortless. Born October 9, 1888, in Springville, Alabama, Henry Hank Patterson grew up in Texas and began his entertainment career not as an actor, but as a pianist and musician in silent movie theaters. It wasn't until the 1930s, when he was already middle-aged, that he began appearing in films. His raspy voice and rugged appearance made him a natural for westerns, and he found steady work in series such as Gunsmoke, Death Valley Days, and The Cisco Kid. By the time he starred in Green Acres, Patterson had established a reputation as one of Hollywood's most reliable supporting actors. Behind the scenes, Patterson faced special challenges. By the mid-1960s, he was nearly deaf and had to rely on co-stars to signal when it was his turn to read his lines. Poor eyesight also made it difficult to read scripts, forcing him to memorize much of his dialogue in advance or improvise on set. Despite these obstacles, he never let his disability slow him down, a quiet testament to his resilience and professionalism. Patterson's personal life is largely unknown to the public. Known as a private man, he was married to Daisy Marguerite Patterson for decades, and their relationship was described by friends as strong and supportive. He avoided the lavish Hollywood parties, choosing a simple life, focusing on work and family. By the early 1970s, Patterson's health was failing, and he gave up acting. On August 23, 1975, he died in Glendale, California, at the age of 86. Although his death was peaceful, it marked the loss of one of the last actors still active during Hollywood's transition from silent to talkies. Alvy Moore as Hank Kimball. Alvy Moore was 44 when he first appeared as Hank Kimball, Green Acres' bumbling farm worker. With his habit of starting a story, forgetting the main point, and then correcting himself mid-sentence, Kimball was a true sitcom gem, a master of timing, awkward charm, and endearing awkwardness. Moore's performance transformed a seemingly forgettable supporting role into one of the show's most enduring comedic highlights. Born December 5, 1921, in Vincennes, Indiana, Jack Alvin Alvy Moore's path to television success was shaped by service and struggle. He joined the United States Marine Corps during World War II and fought in the Battle of Iwo Jima, a traumatic experience that left a lasting mark on his calm, off-the-cuff demeanor. After the war, he attended Illinois Wesleyan University and began pursuing an acting career, moving to Hollywood, where he landed small film roles in the 1950s and early 1960s. His career extended beyond acting. Moore co-founded Lobo Productions with actor Roger Perry, producing the 1975 sci-fi classic A Boy and His Dog. Despite his behind-the-scenes work, however, he remained closely associated with Hank Kimball, a relationship he never resented. Moore embraced the character with fan affection, even appearing at nostalgia conventions well into his later years. Moore kept his personal life relatively private compared to most of his Hollywood peers, marrying his college sweetheart, Carolyn, and was together for more than 5 decades. Friends described their marriage as strong and loving, despite the long periods of separation when Moore was away on business. In private, he had a dry sense of humor and a deep affection for the Brotherhood of the Marine Corps, regularly attending veterans' gatherings. As he aged, Moore's health began to fail. Although he continued to work in television and voice acting into the 1990s, years of smoking left him with lung problems. On March 4, 1997, he died of heart failure in Palm Desert, California, at the age of 75. Eleanor Audley as Eunice Douglas. When Eleanor Audley played Eunice Douglas, Oliver's wealthy, shrewd, and overbearing mother, in Green Acres in 1965, she was 60. With her regal bearing, articulate delivery, and commanding presence, she brought an aristocratic quality to the character that stood in stark contrast to the idyllic absurdity of Hooterville. Every scene she takes carries a certain weight. Eunice is not a mother-in-law. She is a social force, the embodiment of the glamorous, judgmental city life that Oliver has left behind. Born on November 19, 1905 in New York City, Eleanor Audley, born Eleanor Zellman, had a career that stretched far beyond Green Acres. On Broadway in the 1920s and 1930s, she built a reputation as a powerful stage actress before moving into radio and television. She became a regular in early television dramas and sitcoms, but her most enduring fame came from a completely different area of the entertainment industry: voice acting. Audley's signature voice became iconic for 2 of Disney's most memorable villains, Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty, 1959, and Lady Tremaine in Cinderella, 1950. Her performances, imbued with sophistication and menace, have made her a legend in animation history. Her personal life, however, was rather unusual. Audley never married and had no children, a rarity for a woman of her generation, especially in the public eye. She was known to be fiercely independent, preferring a private life to the social world of Hollywood. Friends and colleagues described her as witty, deeply intelligent, and sometimes reserved, perhaps shaped by years of working in a male-dominated industry while still maintaining her own image. By the 1960s, Audley was struggling with chronic respiratory problems, which forced her to be selective about her work. Although she continued to act sporadically, her health was a constant obstacle, and she eventually retired from screen roles in the early 1970s. However, her voice work continued to flourish in re-releases, television specials, and later Disney theme park attractions, ensuring that her talents were accessible to generations who had never seen her on screen. Eleanor Audley died on November 25, 1991 in Los Angeles, at the age of 86 of respiratory failure. When Sid Melton joined Green Acres in 1965 as Alf Monroe, the other brother of the ill-fated Hooterville Carpentry brothers, he was 48 years old. Alf, along with his sister Ralph, always seemed to get stuck in the middle of a project, more likely to cause chaos than get the job done. Melton's quick, energetic energy and sophisticated charm made Alf the perfect counterpoint to Mary Grace Canfield's deadpan acting style, and the two formed a comedic duo that remains one of the show's most memorable odd couples. Born Sidney Meltzer on May 26, 1917 in Brooklyn, New York, Melton grew up in a working-class Jewish family. A lover of performing from a young age, he began his career on stage before moving to film in the 1940s. He found his niche in fast-talking, comedic supporting roles, appearing in B-movies, adventure dramas, and sitcoms. In addition to Green Acres, he was best known for his role as the lovable cafe owner Charlie Halper on The Danny Thomas Show, and his career spanned more than 5 decades. Despite his prolific career, Melton kept his personal life relatively private. He never married, and friends often described him as a man who married only for his art. But behind the laughter was a deep loyalty to his family. He was particularly close to his siblings and often supported them financially. Colleagues in the industry recall him living simply, even frugally, despite his steady work, as if aware that Hollywood's success could vanish overnight. Melton continued to make television guest appearances and even do voiceovers in his old age, but he rarely gave interviews. He later spoke candidly about feeling boxed in. He had dreamed of playing more serious roles, but knew the film industry only saw him as a comedic role. While he accepted this with humor, he secretly sensed what might be lurking beneath his self-conscious exterior. In 2011, Melton was hospitalized with pneumonia, and his health rapidly declined. On November 2, 2011, he died in Burbank, California, at the age of 94. Barbara Pepper as Doris Ziffel. When Barbara Pepper first appeared as Doris Ziffel in Green Acres in 1965, she was 50 years old, sharp-tongued, quick-witted, and utterly believable as the loving mother of Arnold the pig. Doris was the perfect foil to her husband Fred's dry sense of humor, and Pepper's delivery made even the silliest conversations about a pig watching TV sound natural. Born Marion Pepper on May 31, 1915 in New York City, Barbara's striking beauty and charisma led her to a career as an original member of the Goldwyn Girls, a glamorous chorus line that included future legends such as Lucille Ball. She entered the film industry in the 1930s, taking supporting roles in musicals and comedies, and was considered a rising star. Her career took off in the 1940s, and she developed a close friendship with Lucille Ball that would last a lifetime. In real life, Barbara's life had its ups and downs. In 1943, she married actor Craig Reynolds and had 2 sons, but their happiness was short-lived. Reynolds died in a motorcycle accident in 1949 at the age of 42. The sudden loss devastated Pepper, and friends noted that she never fully recovered mentally. The grief, combined with the pressures of Hollywood, led to heavy drinking, which over time affected both her health and her career prospects. By the 1950s, Barbara's glamorous on-screen image had faded, replaced by roles often filled by sympathetic industry friends. Lucille Ball regularly cast her in small roles on I Love Lucy and The Lucy Show. Her role as Doris Ziffel in Green Acres brought her a later career resurgence. But behind the laughter, she struggled with chronic health problems, including heart disease and complications from years of alcohol abuse. In 1969, while the show was airing, Barbara's failing health forced her to leave the show. Just a few months later, on July 18, 1969, she died of a heart attack at the age of 54.